The main famous pub in Earl's Court in those days was the Boltons, which is a big pub. I think it's now an Irish themed pub on the corner of Earl's Court Road, which used to be absolutely packed upstairs. And the Coleherne was a sort of addition. It was a sidebar. It took the overspill from the Boltons when it just got too raucous. And there was one end of the bar which was always the leather crowd, the Muir caps and the leather jackets, and the legendary people who would turn up on the tube in a taxi carrying their crash helmets in a carrier bag. No real bikers in the Coleherne, but everybody wanted to pretend. And it was just a nice laid-back, informal place. There were no pretensions. The days when lots of bars were terribly shishi and you felt you had to dress up. And this was always just a fairly laid-back, easy-going booze, and there were all sorts of people, and nobody batted an eyelid really at anything. The Boltons became very, very sleazy and a bit druggy, and lots of rent boys, and people went off. And the brewery closed it down, and everybody moved across to the Coleherne. And in the early mid-70s, it was said that it was Bass Charrington's most profitable pub in the country. It was packed from 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock onwards to the end. You really had to struggle to get to the bar, but we'd moved to Earl's Court, we lived just around the corner, so we knew the bar staff, so I could just signal from the back of the bar and get served. But it was the last hour in the Coleherne, you just could not move. You see the amount of drinking that was going on. In those days it was run by Pat and Breda, who we got to know quite a lovely straight Irish couple, and we'd stay back for little staybacks, and they'd lock the doors with just a couple of locals and the staff, and they used to show us Bass Charrington training films. And you'd see this totally empty country pub and a buxom barmaid there, and it's you had to smile and welcome every customer who came through the door, and put down a little mat on the bar tap, and everybody rolling about laughing because, of course, the Coleherne was so mobbed. The idea of having a smiling, friendly bar staff welcoming every person who came in the door.
What were Pat and Breda like?
Oh, they were really nice and really very, very friendly. They used to cash cheques for us when we were broke on a Friday night. So we haven't got anything, indeed, to just cash a cheque. Because the pub was always being threatened by the police, who just hated it. There was a street round the back called Wharfdale Street, which was the cruising area. When the pub closed, there'd be people wandering up and down Wharfdale Street, this little side street behind it, till 2 and 3 in the morning. The residents weren't very happy with that. But there was a big crowd outside the pub, and the police always used to sort of home in on that and push everybody out of the way. Really quite nasty and aggressive. But Pat and Breda were really sweet, and they put up with everything. But I remember a friend of mine, there was a bomb scare at the Coleherne, and we were all evacuated. We went over to the Boltons. We took our drinks with us, finished them up, and this guy had put his glass down in the one of the little pot plant places in a restaurant right opposite the Coleherne. And we got the all clear and went back, and he suddenly remembered he'd left his glass there, and like a good concerned citizen, he went to retrieve his glass. He was taking it back to the Coleherne, and he was arrested by the police and charged with stealing 2 beer mugs from the Coleherne. And I think he's come from Islington on the Tube, and he was sort of quite, middle-class professional man. It's 9:30 at night. Why would I be running out of a pub in Earl's Court with 2 beer mugs?
Ridiculous. So there was a lot of harassment then from the authorities and the police.
Yeah. Oh, they took this one, went to court, and we just had witnesses for him, and it was in Central Court in Westminster. This huge panelled chamber with microphones and portraits over these 2 glasses, and everybody stood up and said yes, he was just returning. And the police told all these stories about they'd seen him hiding glasses under his jacket, he'd run down the street with them, and this was so ridiculous. And and Pat and Breda had to turn up as witnesses, and they held up this sort of clear plastic evidence bag with 2 beer mugs in, and the prosecutor said, "Do you recognise these beer mugs?" And Pat just looked at them and said, they're 2 beer mugs. How would I recognise that? And he was found not guilty, and the first thing Pat did, the police had to give him the evidence back, these 2 beer mugs. The first thing Pat did in front of the whole court was walk over to this guy and present him with the 2 beer mugs.
After all of that?
Yeah.
What kind of clients or customers did the Coleherne have? Was it very mixed?
It was quite mixed. Yeah. It was very much a mix. I mean, I used to like that because sooner or later, everybody would say, whether they liked it or not, sooner or later everybody would go into the Coleherne. You'd say, have you been to the Coleherne? Yeah, I hated it. Have you been to the Coleherne? Yes, I like it. So you knew that if you stood in there, sooner or later you were going to see every gay man in the country.
And you were telling me before we started recording about some of the shows. There was a West Indian connection.
Yeah, on an old tradition that gone back decades, that on Sunday afternoons it became a sort of jazz venue, and they'd have a trio playing very a West Indian trio doing very laid back jazz, and it was a really nice mix. It'd be about three quarters black clientele on the Sunday afternoon, plus those of us getting over the Saturday night, and it was a lovely, relaxing come down. It's very sweet, and there's an old lady used to sell Jamaican patties outside from a shopping trolley. It was just a lovely, relaxing way to spend a Sunday afternoon if you were a bit buzzy. It was very relaxing, light jazz. And that gradually died out as things, I don't know, as old traditions go.
What sort of era would it have died out?
Probably late 70s, maybe early 80s.
And of course the Coleherne was known for being some of the nation's best known drag queens. Do you remember any of those shows?
I don't remember any show. No, never saw any drag at the Coleherne.
Never?
No.
Never. It featured very much as a base where a serial killer is infamous anyway, but people like Dennis Nilsen, Michael Lupo and Colin Island picked up some of their victims. Why was it such a target, do you think?
I think because it was quite large and it was crowded, so it would be very, very anonymous. You go to a smaller pub or a place that wasn't so crowded, you'd remember people more, remember faces, but somewhere like that was just so crowded, it could be so anonymous, because it was quite a big open pub. You really wouldn't notice people. I think it was that kind of temptation would be a horrible thing to say, but it's sort of easy pickings. If you were going to choose a pub, that would be the place you go to where you could blend in, and somebody say, well, did you see this guy? And say, God, how with these hundreds of, especially when everybody looks exactly the same with Muir cap and a moustache. It used to amaze me. It's like when you see those David Attenborough documentaries about penguins and they all return to their partner. You think, how do they know each other? Sorry.
And the pub attracted quite a few famous people. You had Rudolf Nureyev, Kenny Everett, Freddie Mercury. Do you remember seeing these people? Did they blend in?
Yes. There's some people sort of seem to blend in quite nicely. I remember John Curry, the ice skater, and Ian Charleson, the actor, who they would look a bit sad, a bit out of what was going on. It's in there hugging their drinks, and people would be frightened to go up and speak to them because they recognised them and thought they were famous. And they looked a bit embarrassed by it all. They still turned up there, but the big showbiz names, Freddie Mercury and Kenny Everett, would sort of turn up surrounded by acolytes and hangers-on in this sort of huge circle, a donut around them, and they'd be sort of stuck in the middle. But occasionally,
When do you think its heyday was?
Oh, mid-late 70s. It was, it was seething, absolutely packed. I really enjoyed it, but it attracted, a lot of attention from the police, and we became sort of fairly regular witnesses in court because the police would sort of try and move everybody on in their lovely, polite way. Fuck off! Haven't you got any fucking homes to go to? Fucking club, John. And then they'd grab somebody, usually from the edge of the crowd, nobody would see, just as an example, and then charge them the next day with obstruction. And we saw this happen, and I remember going back and phoning Chelsea police station, because there was a dividing line between Kensington and Chelsea, went down the old Brompton Road, so it's Chelsea, just fell into their jurisdiction. And we phoned up Chelsea police station, said we'd just seen somebody arrested outside a pub. We were witnesses, can you tell us? And they said, are you relatives, friends? I said, no, we just, and they put the phone down on us. And we just kept phoning up all night, and they just kept putting the phone down, and eventually gave in and told us it was going to be at Western Magistrates Court in the morning. We turned up, managed to see this guy before thing, and said, if you want to plead not guilty, we saw what happened. And and the 3 police got up and just told this load of stuff, because they have to be, you can't just say it was part of a crowd, we grabbed somebody to make an example, it has to be specific to that person. So they got up and they told this tale of people had been clearing away, they'd gone up to him and he'd refused to move, and he'd taken 1 pace to the left and 1 pace to the right, and then they went back and warned him again, and he'd just taken 1 pace, and eventually, because he was being so obstructive, they had to arrest him. And 3 police, one after another, came in and all told exactly the same story, and we told our version. He got off and he was very grateful. But so we started doing it as it kind of became a regular thing then, because I was working for Gay News or working at home, so I was free to kind of take time off. But we felt to it ourselves. We were walking out one night, and I had my arm around my partner's shoulder, and he had his arm around the waist, which is actually quite unusual. I don't know why we were doing it. It must have been a particularly lovey-dovey mood that day. And a policeman was just ground to a halt, and the policeman jumped out, and his first words were, "Stop that." And I didn't know, I'm not the bravest person in the world, but I felt I was within my rights. I thought, I've got my arm around somebody's shoulder. I think I know what he's talking about, but I feel I'm on fairly safe ground, that I'm not breaking any laws. And I said, politely, "Stop what?" He said, "Move that arm." Which I thought was so ridiculous. So I thought, no, I'll be firm but polite and say, "Why?" He said, "Because you'll be arrested." So I was feeling more confident now. I thought, well, so I asked politely, "What for?" "Right, you're nicked." And we were both thrown in the back of the van. At first, the first thing that made me funny was, "Right, you're nicked." I thought, really, they actually say that? I thought, this feels like Dixon Dot Green and Z cars. Or something. They really talk like that. And then we were sitting in the back of a police van and being whisked off to the police station, saying, what just happened? So I got to there, they took statements, and we were charged with behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace. Right, okay. This was a bit embarrassing. It was post-punk era, it must have been 79, 80, so yeah, just tatty jeans, knees sticking out, and I had an old sports jacket that I painted a large pink triangle on. So
you wanted a reaction.
Yeah, I was a bit. Yeah. It wasn't done with it. I mean, I wasn't aware of doing anything. It wasn't like a demo where we were just kissing or making a point. It was just the kind of thing I used to wear in those wacky days of the 70s. So we went along and we knew all the solicitors are obviously specialised in civil rights cases, and so we'd been with many cases with Gay News and with people who'd been arrested for obstruction. So we got a solicitor and said, we're going to fight, this is ridiculous. How can you, it felt win-win, because either way, if they say, putting your arm around another man is behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, then you've got a good rallying point, actually say that overtly, and it's something to make a noise about. If they say that's not behaviour, we've won, it means you're free to put your around somebody. So I thought, either way, if we fight it's going to be a good case. So we were about to go to court, and we got our best suits on, we dug out that we hadn't worn in 10 years. And at the last minute, I thought this looked a bit shifty, because we're not actually denying anything. We're not saying no, we weren't, or we're terribly respectable. We're saying yes, we were doing this. I did have my arm around him. And I said, do you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, oh, he was dressed up like this, and they're going to really exaggerate and make it sound. So I said, let's put on exactly what we were wearing. That didn't go down too well with the solicitor. So I was, oh my God, he's going to take this as an insult to the court, and. But anyway, we were all ready to fight the case, and the police got up to give their evidence. And I just couldn't believe it. It was the same old story. Their version of events was we had been standing in the middle of the road outside the Coleherne, obstructing traffic, embracing and kissing. And there's the Italian restaurant directly opposite the Coleherne. I can't remember, quite a posh restaurant. And two couples in evening dress had come out of this restaurant, seen us, were shocked. They'd flagged down the police van and said, "This is disgusting, can't you do anything about it?" And the police said, "No, it's a free country, they can do what they like." And they said one of these gentlemen in evening dress became so irate, they thought he was going to attack us, and we were arrested for our own safety. And three, fresh-faced, bright young policemen came up one after another, and all gave verbatim the same story. And my jaw dropped, because there were no witnesses. It was the days before there was any CCTV, there were no witnesses, and it was just a couple of outrageous-looking scruffs against, three perfectly honest-looking policemen. And it wasn't a sort of slight ambiguity of what happened, of having a different slant. It was just totally different. And I thought, we're sunk here. So we. I remember the prosecution guy came over. He was such a stereotypical sort of low-faced old, bewigged barrister, and he got a huge pile of papers. And what they were supposed to be for, tied up with ribbon under his arm, which had been rented from a props company to intimidate us, I think, to make us think they got files on us going back years or something like that. And his first question to me was, "Are you a practicing homosexual?" And I just said yes. And you could instantly see deflation in it, because it was not the expected answer in those days. You were supposed to sort of, that's got nothing to do with anything, and say, I just had my arm around a good friend, at which point they could then go down the road and saying, and you live together and you're not married and you've lived in a flat. And it makes you sound a bit diva, though you're not quite being honest about what happened. Whereas once you say, yes, I'm gay, this is my boyfriend, I have my arm around his shoulder.
So you stood up for yourself,
and
you weren't going to go back into that closet.
Yeah.
At all.
And the magistrate really took against us. He didn't like the fact that how we were dressed, and thought we were making a point. His initial thing was just to throw the case out and say, and our solicitor came back beaming and said, "It's such a minor thing." He said, "We're not going to have a hearing." He said, "You're just bound over to keep the peace for a year. And no fine or anything, and off you go." And I said, well, hang on. Two things. A, I was kind of tacitly admitting I was doing something to cause a breach of the peace. And also, I'm promising not to do it again for 12 months. I don't accept either of those.
So you still took a stand?
Yeah. So, and the magistrate was not happy with that, thought we were making a point. I thought, well, we're sunk, but we've made a stand. The police gave their version of what happened, and solicitor questioned them on that and said, and will you be producing these two couples who were in evening dress? And said, no, but you've got statements from them. No, not such. But you have got the names and addresses. You took their names and addresses of these complaints. No. But you've just got the name. No. And then we gave evidence who described exactly what we were doing that. I thought, it's a losing battle, you can't. And the magistrate sort of nodded. He said, well, there's no ambiguity in this case. There's no grey area. It's obvious one side or the other are lying like troopers. I said, fine for the defendants and award costs against the police.
You won?
Yeah.
That's quite a turn-up.
I was astonished at sort of, our natural honesty shone through.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, I think Michael Mason turned up. I think he covered it for Capital Gay. He turned up in the press box. There was some comment from the, it was West London Magistrates Court, and I don't think anybody had sat in this press box since 1923 or something. And the judge made some comment. I see the press is here. Somebody's trying to make a point. We thought we were sunk. I was absolutely amazed. It was almost impressive. Restored some of my faith in the judicial system. But I always find magistrates actually quite fair, as opposed to when the blasphemy case, the high court judges are absolutely closed mind, made their minds up, reactionary, defending the status quo. all these various things. The magistrates were a bit more worldly wise, and you could see that they knew to take police evidence.
I remember you also telling me before we started recording that there was a gay pride march, and some protesters who went to the Coleherne didn't like their sexuality being politicised.
Yeah, yes, that was a march that a very, very, very small march one year, and I thought it was going to fizzle out. It might have been 81 or 82 or something. It went from Sloane Square to the ghetto heartland of Earl's Court, and there were only about 100 of us. The numbers have been dwindling over the years from the heady days of the early 70s. We met up at Sloane Square and had to have police protection. There was a bunch of skinheads there, and the police were standing with the skinheads, sort of all, they were shrugging their shoulders as if to say, yeah, we don't like them any more than you do, but it's our job to protect them. And they were very much making a show if they would be standing and being chatty with the skinheads who were shouting, "You fucking poof." And were sort of, grudgingly obliged to protect us and follow. And we sort of traipsed through the streets of South Kensington, some drizzle on a damp Saturday afternoon, nobody about, nobody to witness it. There was 100 so people straggling through the streets, and got to Earl's Court, went past the Coleherne, which is open in the afternoon, and there was just abuse came out of the open doors, and a couple of beer cans and bottles.
And these were coming from
the Coleherne.
Customers in the Coleherne.
Yeah. There was a huge antipathy towards gay liberation or gay politics. People felt very threatened that, we've got our little world sorted out. You're going to cause trouble for us, if you're troublemakers. There's a lot of animosity towards gay politics. I remember we traipsed around and went to the square behind the Coleherne, and somebody stood up on somebody's doorstep with a bit of lined note paper and read out a little speech. And I went, and that was it. And I remember having this horrible feeling of, oh my God, this must be the last gay pride there will ever be. And then a couple of years later, of course, in 84, turned into this huge jamboree, and it really took off. Like, my God, I can't believe that it came back from this little struggle through Earl's Court.
Any other memories of the Coleherne?
Yeah, I should have, having been there for 20 regularly for 20 years. But they mostly ended up in alcoholic oblivion. We did have a little mini riot there. We had a mini Coleherne, polite British Stonewall.
What happened?
It was middle of summer and it was when this police coming around every night and telling people to fuck off and bugger off and push out of the way really started to get. Even the most conservative people in the Coleherne were starting to get a little bit pissed off with this. And there were also plainclothes police about, and there were two guys in T-shirts and jeans who were undercover plainclothes police, and they tried to arrest somebody in the street outside the Coleherne. Of course, nobody knew what was going on. They just thought it was queer bashing or something, and surrounded it, and they produced their badge, and so the police were making an arrest. And everybody piled out of the Coleherne and just surrounded these guys, and they got this guy they'd arrested in a headlock. But they were totally outnumbered. Everybody from the Coleherne came out, and there was creating an almighty noise in the road and got held at the traffic. The police turned up, the locals got pissed off, were throwing buckets of water of the police who turned up to try and stop it. And the police were actually outnumbered. I've never seen them back down before. It went on for a couple of hours, and they were determined not to let this guy go. And eventually they had to let him go and to retreat and get in the vans, and the police vans drove off, and everybody just spontaneously sort of dancing in the middle of the road. So I couldn't believe it that they backed down, the police. We thought this is going to be a turning point for something, but it never. It was just a one-off. It was just one summer's night where everybody's tempers flared, and there were no police round for the next couple of nights. The next time the police came round, they sent two rotund, ruddy-faced bobbies straight out of an Ealing comedy. Good evening, lads, to try and calm the whole thing down.
Do you think it was from those times onwards that attitudes within the police changed at all?
Yeah, I because up till that time, it was an easy arrest for the police. People were in the closet, they were afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of parents finding out. So the police could just grab somebody, accuse them of absolutely anything, and people would say, I don't care, I know, I'll pay a fine, I'll plead guilty, don't put my name in the papers. So it was easy peasy. But once people started saying, oh hell, we're going to fight this, you can't out me, I'm out. They had to start backing down. It really did, that change. When you're working for Gay News, and they say what your employer's going to think if they find out you got an arm around a guy. I think, good for you, you scored.
Anything else you want to add?
Oh. Yes, I talked about the really early days, the 60, the 68 it was a kind of, I don't know if I talked about this earlier, but that was a kind of interesting time because it was very, everything was very new, and the thing had only been decriminalised in 67, and there was I don't remember any massive change. I don't even remember it being in the paper, although I'd have been 17 when it happened. I think it was a bit of niche news, that half a dozen men in Chelsea might be interested in it. But I discovered the scene in 68, went rushing off to, there were 2 pubs in Stoke. It was a bit of a tradition. All the cities always had 2 pubs. There was the posh one and the real slummy one. They were fairly close together, and they were always within walking distance of the stage door of the theatre. So I think they'd gradually grown up over the years out of the chorus boy tradition. Touring actors always, pop over the road from the stage door. It was the same in Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool. They always had this same setup. There was usually one bar in the city's Grand Hotel, and in Hanley it was the Grand Hotel. The front bar was a gentleman-only bar with armchairs, and that was the rather more respectable gay gentleman. And then just across the road from it was this sort of dive bar called the Antelope, which was everybody else, just drag queens, really, really butch dykes in suits, and all sorts of low lives.
You mentioned, we talked about the Coleherne a lot. You mentioned the Boltons at the beginning. What are your memories of the Boltons?
Yeah, the Boltons was raucous. I'd heard of Earl's Court when I was in Hanley. There were the people who popped down to London, and they talk about the Boltons and the Coleherne. I always thought it was Coleherne. It was the Stoke, an urn for keeping covers. Oh, Coleherne. I see. But I didn't know where anywhere was, so I just came down on the train for a weekend, came to Earl's Court, wandered around, did every pub in Earl's Court, saying this doesn't look very gay. And eventually recognised the Boltons, which was empty downstairs. A couple of little guys with half pints of mild. Until some elaborate drag queen came in, swanned up the stairs, followed them up, and it was heaving. It was packed. It was one big old room over the pub, and there was a little front bar in the early days as well. And it was all sorts. It was drag queens, rough guys. It was a complete mix. It was loud, raucous, lively, packed, very, very down to earth. I think there were sort of beer kegs to sit on, and lots of characters. I remember a couple of characters called the Dolly Sisters were always in there. Night 2 like twin men with peroxide hair, fluffy pink Angora sweaters and black tights, who were always popping up one corner of the bar. It was full of these wonderful old characters, but it gradually became too seedy when it sort of went downhill and it closed. I think the 3 main pubs, there was another one in King's Road called the Colville, which I think now is a gents' clothes shop that you can still see if it's outside. It still looks like pub architecture. So there was a little triangle that you used to do if you went down to London between the Boltons, the Coleherne, and then a little train to Sloane Square and do the Colville, which was I think somebody described it as full of BBC producers in fluffy sweaters called Nigel.
Wasn't there one called Copas on near the Earls Court Road or on the Earls Court?
Yeah, there was a club later on. There was a club open, the Copacabana opened. That was the year of the big discos and Bang. Was it Bolts, one of the first ones? Bang, Bolts.
There was Bang, and I remember there was the Catacombs.
The Catacombs, yes, that was the little place just around the corner from the Coleherne. It's still empty nobody's ever taken it over. It was under a restaurant called, and there was nothing outside, say, Catacombs. It was under a restaurant called the Knave's Kitchen, which I never ever saw open. But we went down, and it was just a little coffee. It was tiny, and it was just a coffee house. It wasn't licensed. It had a dance floor that was about 6 feet square, and a row, almost like catacombs, around the dance floor is brick pillars and little tabled alcoves.
And I remember there was one, was it Sombreros on Kensington High Street?
Yeah.
Yours or Mine or something like that?
Yes, never. That had a bit of a reputation. It was a bit poncy, a bit up its own. It was largely for, how can I put this, wealthy, closeted businessmen with young, slim Oriental boyfriends. Very much. We didn't much go there. I only tried to go in once when everywhere was shut. I was desperate for a drink. I got halfway down the stairs and looked. I thought, no, this isn't my kind of place. It was all very shishy. I think it's featured in film Velvet Goldmine. It features that is the most hilariously inaccurate film I've ever seen. I love the film, but it's like everybody involved in it is either too young, too American, or too straight. But their fantasy version of the sombrero in that is, I don't know if you remember, it's a lovely sort of Georgian townhouse with a cobbled courtyard and lamps either side. Whereas the entrance to Yours and Mine was this anonymous glass door by W.H. Smith's on High Street in Kensington. And they walk inside, and in their version of it is the Barry character in a dress is playing guitar. And everybody's talking Polari, and you thought,
it never happened.
It was never like I love that scene with the Polari with subtitles. It's quite fun, and I wish it had been like that. But I think I just caught the fag end of, so to speak, of Polari when I was still. People didn't talk like that all the time, but there's still the cottage and drag and the odd words like that. And it was the days of course, Round the Horn. It was this wonderfully subversive program, because nobody had any idea what it was. They knew vaguely there were a couple of camp characters, but they were quite lewd, and it was great because you could sit around the dinner table on Sunday afternoon, the parents less chortling away as if filthy gay references were sort of tumbling out to the radio. So when I first got it, there was still quite a bit of Polari going on, especially when I went up to the clubs in Manchester and walked in the club, and the first time I'd seen men in drag, some older person would lean over to you and you're all new and wide-eyed and say, "That's drag, and you sort of say, "Really? I wouldn't get that to Manchester, is it? Oh, right." Because and the gay scene was much camper then, because there were so few people that come out that got a gay identity. People only came out, went to a gay bar if there was no way they could conceivably hide it. So when you went to a bar, I never knew anybody by any other name than Ruby, Thelma, Alma, Polly, Tina, and those are their names. I never knew them as anything else. It was there was always the mother. I think Alma was the mother hen in our local in Hanley. It was a fixture by the bar with the.
Tony?
Yes, I bet.
Thank you very much.